If SI joint dysfunction is causing you grief, this is the foam rolling practice for you. Hi, welcome to Wealthy Boss. My name is Mariah, and I bring you new barre, yoga, and Pilates workouts every week. SI joint dysfunction is something that is near and dear to my heart, as well as kind of all lower back pain conditions for the active person, so people for whom the traditional kind of advice just maybe isn't quite cutting it. So today's practice is all going to be about working specifically with the areas of our body that can become exacerbated, where the tissues can become really tight when we're experiencing SI joint dysfunction. So a lot of experts will say that almost all SI joint dysfunction is associated with overextension of the pelvis. So too much, leaning forward, or even tightness causing the hips to kind of tilt forward like this, such as in an anterior pelvic tilt. So what we're going to do today to kind of help release some of that forward pulling tension is we are going to foam roll, getting into the psoas and iliacus on the front, as well as the quads, because that can over exacerbate if we're tight in those areas. The piriformis, so the back of your seat, can also be one of those areas, kind of culprit areas that can make SI joint dysfunction worse. So those are that's kind of the rationale of what we're going to go into today. You're going to need a foam roller and then either a tennis ball or a myofascial release ball. Let's get to work. I'll join you on the floor. Let's begin on our backs with our knees bent and our feet on the floor. Now I'm actually going to slide this foam roller under those SI joints. And we don't normally want to foam roll on a joint or on a bony area. We're actually going to use the roller instead as a prop initially to get into a little dynamic stretch. So what I'd like you to do is take your feet a little bit wider than hip width distance. So maybe the distance of the mat. The longer you are, the wider you go. I'm pretty short, so I'm going to stay right about mat. Now, one leg at a time, we're going to take some windshield wipers, but we have a pretty specific technique here. I want you to roll the back hip out, but really tack down the opposite hip. So you're kind of unweighting one hip while pressing the opposite hip down, and then bring it right back up. So one leg at a time out to the side, but what you're doing is really lengthening the opposite hip. This allows you to kind of self-assess and see if one side is tighter than the other. Since we do technically have two SI joints, this can absolutely be the case. And either way, we're getting a really great stretch kind of along those front hip flexors. Maybe carrying some deep inhales as you open. Again, planting that other hip down. Exhale as you return. Let's do one more on each side. And then if you were tighter on one side than the other, feel free to put me on pause, or if you want to do this again on your own, you can actually hang out longer on one side, the side that is the tightest. Again, if you're feeling a little bit uneven in one joint. You could also add a figure four, but first, start to move the torso away. Take that foot a little bit further in, say this is the tight side, and then cross one ankle over the other. You can kind of take a little release. And again, you can kind of experiment with your shoulders further or far closer. But again, we're kind of tilting that leg out to the side, and the opposite one comes down. So you only need to do that if you feel kind of unbalanced one side. You can hang out a little bit more there. But I'm going to go ahead and take you now into our foam rolling technique. So you can slide that foam roller away from the hips. We're going to roll over onto our bellies, and I'm going to demonstrate first with the back leg. What I actually like to do, kind of what I've learned from some of my favorite physical therapists, is to actually tuck the opposite knee under. So I am actually going to start with that foam roller a little bit closer towards my kneecap, but not on it. We want to avoid placing that roller again on a joint. We're going to actually have that knee tucked. Now, I've experimented with this a couple of different ways, and I think it's just personal preference. For the most amount of control, meaning you're pretty tight right here, then I suggest having your shin right under your thigh. You can tuck those toes and begin to kind of roll forward and back. But if you also want to add a little bonus hip stretch and the weight is not too intense on that quad, you can actually come out into a little external rotation. It's going to add a touch more gravity into that quad. So we have a few different techniques here. We're going to roll gently forward and back. Nice deep inhales, exhales are going to help release that connective tissue. helps to also detoxify any toxins we are releasing. You can keep the toes planted, go side to side. See how it feels to go to the inner edge of that thigh and the outer edge. Now if this is going well and you want to up the ante, ooh, I'm already feeling this myself. Flex the foot, give me a little knee bend, and then extend toes back to the ground. Nicely done. Now do take care here if you have the knee out to the side. Make sure you don't totally collapse so that that leg seesaws up. However, just a little bit of weight into that roller, of course, is a good thing because we're adding a little bit more pressure. We're just going to encourage the flow of more circulation once we remove that pressure. Good. You can also keep the leg lifted and start to go side to side. Ooh, there we go. Good stuff. Keep that breath flowing. Notice if you are holding onto your breath, let's try not to. And then we're going to start to move the elbows back, move the knee back, or you can just simply alternatively place that hand on the foam roller, moving it closer to you. And again, if it gets more intense as we come up, maybe the shin comes directly underneath the knee. And again, maybe experiment with a little bit of extension. You can either have the foot flex, see how that feels. If it feels better to have the toe pointed, feel free. Good. You can go forward and back. Just start to play here and explore. There we go. And then again, one more time, we'll take that foam roller up so that it's just kind of beneath the crease of the hip here. Now, if I keep my toes planted, all is well. But where I really start to get some good stuff is if I lift the toes off the ground. And again, I can kind of go forward and back. Nice deep breaths here. I can roll to one side or the other. Ooh, there's where I feel quite a bit. Depending on how tight you are, again, you might feel like you want to flex and extend. I find this is a little bit more intense because you kind of have the weight of the trunk pressing that tissue in towards the foam roller a little bit deeper. Oh, goodness gracious. And we'll go ahead and take it to the other side. Now, if you're doing just this on your own, you're welcome to hang out a little bit longer. I just want to show you several techniques today so you can find the ones that work the best for you. So again, I'll tuck that knee under. That foam roller comes just right above the kneecap. And I think on the other side, I have my hip extended out to the side. Again, personal preference. We can start to see how it feels with the toes anchored firmly onto the earth. Maybe spinning side to side. If you're ready for a little more, that foot comes up, gently working forward and backward. Slow, silky breaths, feeling everything begin to melt away. Beautiful, maybe a little flex and extend. And you can add some rotation as you flex and extend. You could, for example, take the heel wider than the ankle, kind of turn the toes in. Maybe see if that feels a little bit more intense. Or the other way, kind of getting a little more to the inner edge of that quad. And then let's go ahead and either kind of work our way back with the body, or we can just pull that foam roller to the middle section. And experimenting again with any of those techniques. So by now you're hopefully getting a feel for where the stiffest pockets of tissue are. So you can hang out a little bit longer with those. Side to side, you can flex and extend. Goodness gracious. Usually there's more hiding, more lurking in our quads than we realized. And then once more, let's come up so that we're just kind of a couple of inches below the crease of that groin. Maybe the knee comes all the way under for a little bit more support here. Goodness gracious. Who knew all that was in there? So when our quads are tight, they in turn can impact the hip flexors or just, the entire pelvis, really kind of pulling it forward in that extension, which can aggravate those SI joints by having that uneven load. Couple more breaths here. Woo. Perfect. Perfect. Go ahead and sit up from that for a moment. We're gonna trade that foam roller now for your ball. So a tennis ball works great. I have a little trigger point therapy ball here. Honestly, I don't necessarily prefer it over a tennis ball. It's just what I have. So tennis ball works great. And then we're gonna start to work into our psoas here. Okay, so we're gonna take that ball and we're aiming for about an inch or so, just kind of right into that interior edge, just inside of that bony protrusion in front of your hip. We don't wanna go too deep here. We don't wanna get into the femoral artery, but we can kind of play with a little bit, a couple inches or so of a diagonal placement here. And then show this way so you can kind of see the ball underneath me. We're gonna go ahead and lay on it. Now, if you feel the ball pressing into bone, you're not narrow enough, so just slide that ball slightly inside. So maybe we experiment with keeping the shoulders lifted. And then again, we can just kind of tuck the toes and start to lengthen the heel towards the end of the mat, and then slightly bring it forward. Lengthen, slightly bring it forward. So this is technique number one. Otherwise, we can take our hands down onto from your head down onto our hands. Extend the toes, so point the toe of the leg, the ball is underneath, and then start to lift and lower. That could be pretty intense. You may never have really rolled into this area, but it again can be a strong culprit for exacerbating or sometimes even causing SI joint pain. Sometimes it's a little, chicken and egg situation. But the more that we can release the tissue downstream of the pelvis, the greater the odds are that we're going to have more of a neutral pelvic position, which can only lead to helping our bodies out when it comes to SI joint pain. Another couple breaths in and out. Beautiful. And then let's go ahead and roll over to the other side. So again, kind of finding that inner edge where we're avoiding the pelvis. We're just inside. And option one is to have those forearms up. And again, you kind of lengthen the heel. You'll feel that ball slightly lift up as you do that. And then take ease back off of it. Or if you felt like you got more, by placing the forehead on stacked arms, pointing the toe, be a lift and lower. Lift on the inhale, exhale and lower. You don't have to lift very high, and we don't need to kill ourselves here. On a scale of 1 to 10, we want that intensity to be between 6 and an 8. Perfect. Go ahead and press back. Again, if you're doing this on your own or you find any of these particular techniques helpful, you can spend more time when you're practicing on your own, but I want to show you a few more things here. We're going to start off with our glutes, foam rolling on the roller, but then we're going to transition to the ball. So I'm going to have you take a little pigeon pose here, and then start to rock your weight into one hip. And I'm going to have you go slightly forward and back. You can kind of walk the hands back a little bit if you need. So this is really just a warm up. I much prefer using the ball to get into that piriformis. Pause here, and then we're just going to go side to side. So we're just kind of in that middle section of the seat in terms of forward and back, and then we're leaning over to the outer edge of the musculature. Good, and let's try the other side. So again, we'll start, roll over to the other side, adjust if you're on a short roller like I am, and we can start with a little bit of forward and back. This is just the warm up. The good stuff is about to happen still. And then we can go center and side. Alrighty, now for the good stuff, my friends. We're gonna click that foam roller away. And I have in other videos, I go a little bit more complex with different placements for the ball to get all into the entire area of the glutes, since we all have more than just one glute muscle. We got a lot of real estate to cover there. Today I'm going to work specifically into kind of the gluteus medius, to get a little bit more into kind of the glute med, into the piriformis, so that we can release some of that tension that might be creating some imbalance in that SI joint. So I'm going to actually have you take, so we're kind of to the medius side of the seat, under the glute max, and then just roll it over like 2 inches, maybe even 2.5, so that you're slightly to the right side of the center of the seat, if that makes sense. Now I want you to drop that knee out to the side. And now, kind of that same movement that we did on that foam roller, where it's side to side, we were pigeon pose before. This time though, we have that knee falling out to the side, the other foot is planted firmly. And we're rocking back and forth, side to side. Very good. Now, maybe experiment how it feels down to take that ball even just like a 1/2 inch further to the side. Ooh, there. For me, that was a lot juicier. So a lot of foam rolling to really get the precision of the placement. It's just kind of self-experimentation. So just slightly repositioning that ball. Ooh, that made a huge difference for me. I can definitely tell I'm tight here, and that makes sense. We're kind of getting more into that piriformis area, and especially if you happen to be on the athletic side. Now, all of this can be tight here for different reasons. Sometimes inactivity can lead to a similar result, but overactivity also can be a common culprit here, which can create that low back pain that can be frustrating, right? Because you're quote unquote doing the right thing and moving your body, and it rewards you, the body rewards you with back pain. So we just want to make sure that we're balancing everything out. Good. Go ahead and come off of that. We'll take that onto side 2. So again, we lift up the hips. We find just kind of the center of the left side of the seat, and then roll it about 2, even 2.5 inches to the side. We're going to drop that knee out, and again, just side to side here. Let the weight of that knee drop towards the ground. You also feel a nice little counter stretch over the opposite hip here, which can be, of course, really nice. As we already discussed, that can play a big role in that SI joint pain. Keep that breath deep, using it to help relax the body when it feels like gripping, signaling to the brain that it is safe to let go. So good. And then just another 1/2 inch out to the side, same position for everything else. Some great things here to loosen everything up, bring us back into balance, taking care of that body that works so hard for us. Perfect. Go ahead and roll out of that. Give your knees a little squeeze, and thank you. How you are feeling after this foam rolling workout. So go ahead and drop me a comment below. I'd love to get to know you a little bit. If again, SI joint dysfunction is kind of something that you are struggling with either right now or maybe on a chronic basis, I have another class you may be interested in as well. This is my yoga for SI joint dysfunction class, and got a lot of good feedback from this, so I'm hoping you give it a try as well. You might also consider looking beyond just stretching and foam rolling and kind of considering what other factors might go into your lower back pain. So I do have another resource for you as well, my Back Bliss ebook. This is 3 yoga and Pilates essentials to loving your low back, and I invite you to download that for free. So I will link to that in the description below. You can click on that link, and I can't wait to hear from you and hope you're feeling better.